I doubt this marriage will last another year. She's nowhere near my level. Those words came from my husband's mouth. Not whispered in anger during a fight. Not muttered in frustration after a bad day. No. He said them clearly, proudly to his friends, while I stood frozen just outside our patio doors, holding a tray of steaks I'd spent an hour preparing. My name is Elena Carter. And on that Thursday evening in June, my entire world shattered in the span of 30 seconds. Let me take you back to that moment. Picture this: a beautiful evening, warm breeze, string lights. I'd hung myself glowing above our outdoor dining area. I'd left my office early, something I rarely did, to make sure everything was perfect for Marcus's weekly gathering with his friends. I'd marinated the steaks, selected wine from our collection, set out the appetizers on the handmade ceramic plates we'd bought in Portugal. I'd even changed out of my work clothes into something casual and welcoming, because Marcus always said presentation mattered, even at home. I was trying to be the perfect wife. The supportive partner. The woman who balanced a demanding career with making sure her husband felt valued and seen. What I didn't know was that these Thursday night gatherings weren't about poker or business strategy or male bonding. They were planning sessions. Sessions where Marcus and his friends discussed how to destroy me. Through the glass doors, I could see them clearly. Marcus sat at the head of the table, my table, in my backyard, in the house I'd purchased 3 years before we married. His best friend Ryan was on his left, nodding enthusiastically. Carlos and Tyler flanked the other side, raising their glasses like Marcus had just announced something worth celebrating. "She's changed," Marcus continued, swirling his wine with the kind of pretentious motion he'd learned from YouTube tutorials. "Ever since Elena landed that Patterson Tech contract, she acts like she single-handedly saved the world. The ego is unbearable." My hands tightened on the tray. Patterson Tech. The account I'd pursued for 8 months. The pitch I'd delivered to their board while Marcus was at a golf resort in Arizona. The contract that brought in $6 million annually and established my consulting firm as a major player in the tech industry. Ryan leaned forward, his expression serious. "You built that company from nothing, Marcus. She just got lucky with timing. Lucky, I wanted to laugh, or scream, or throw the tray through the window and watch their faces as reality crashed through their delusion. But I didn't. I stood there, perfectly still, watching my husband accept praise for a completely fabricated version of our life. See? Marcus and I met 5 years ago at a networking event. I was already running a successful consulting practice, small but profitable, with clients who valued my strategic insights. Marcus was between jobs, charming and confident, full of ideas about ventures he wanted to launch. I fell for his charisma, his vision, his ability to make even failed concepts sound like they'd been stepping stones to inevitable success. What I didn't see, what I refused to see, was that Marcus collected dreams but never built them. He'd start projects with explosive enthusiasm, then abandon them when the actual work began. And every time, I'd be there to cushion his fall, financially, emotionally, professionally. The crypto trading platform that lost $70,000 of our savings? I'd absorbed that loss without complaint. The organic meal delivery service that never found a single customer? I'd paid the LLC fees and website costs. The wellness app that couldn't compete with the 1,000 free alternatives already on the market? I'd funded that too, telling myself I was investing in my husband's potential. And through it all, Marcus maintained this narrative that he was the visionary. He was the entrepreneur. I was just the practical one who handled the boring details, the contracts, the clients, the revenue that kept us living in luxury. "Elena's become impossible to work with," Marcus said, pulling my attention back to the conversation I was accidentally overhearing. "She throws numbers at me constantly. Revenue this, profit margins that. She doesn't understand that business is about more than spreadsheets." Carlos laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Sounds like she's turned into one of those corporate robots. All work, no vision, no vision." The man who'd never successfully launched a single venture was calling me visionless. Tyler grabbed another bottle from the outdoor wine fridge, the one I'd had, installed last summer, and refilled everyone's glasses. "You deserve someone who appreciates what you bring to the table, Marcus. Someone who understands that being a leader isn't about grinding away at details. Being a leader. That's what Marcus called himself at dinner parties while I was actually leading. He'd corner guests with theories about disrupting industries while I was closing million-dollar deals. He'd lecture people about innovation while I was innovating. He'd talk endlessly about strategy while I strategized our company from a home office into a downtown suite with 37 employees. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Jennifer, my senior project manager. Patterson Tech just approved the expansion proposal. They want to triple their contract starting next quarter. Elena, you're a miracle worker. Congratulations. Triple the contract. $18 million annually. It would be the biggest deal in our company's history. Tomorrow morning, I had the meeting that would finalize everything, and here was my husband, my business partner, the man whose name appeared on every company document beside mine, telling his friends that our marriage was a joke. The thing is, Marcus said, and his tone shifted to something colder. More calculated, I've been documenting everything, every decision she makes without consulting me, every time she undermines my authority with the staff. My attorney says I have a strong case for taking at least half the company, maybe more. The tray nearly slipped from my hands, his attorney. Marcus had been meeting with Derek Sullivan, the guy he told me was just a golf buddy, about dividing assets. About taking my company, the business I'd built from nothing while he played pretend entrepreneur. Smart thinking, Ryan said, raising his glass again. Get everything organized before she realizes what's happening. She won't see it coming, Marcus assured them, his voice dripping with confidence. Elena thinks she's brilliant with her presentations and client relationships, but she has no idea about the real game being played. The real game. The game where he'd been plotting to steal everything I'd created while sharing my bed, eating meals I prepared, living in comfort my income provided. I picked up the tray again, my decision crystallizing with perfect clarity. The steaks had gone cold anyway, they'd need to be reheated. But I wouldn't be the one doing it. I pushed open the patio doors. 4 heads snapped toward me in perfect synchronization. Marcus's wine glass froze halfway to his mouth. Ryan's eyes went wide. Carlos actually took a step backward. Tyler suddenly found his phone screen absolutely fascinating. The silence was so complete, I could hear wind chimes tinkling in our neighbor's yard. Marcus, I said. My voice steady and calm, the same tone I used when firing underperforming contractors. I have a question. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For once in his life, Marcus had no words. You said our marriage is a joke that won't survive another year. You said I'm nowhere near your level. I set the tray down on the side table with deliberate care. Why wait a year? Let's end it tonight. Right now, Elena, he finally managed. His face cycling from shock to panic to something like fear. I wouldn't want you to endure another 12 months married to someone so far beneath you. I smiled, and I watched him recognize that this smile was nothing like the ones I'd given him for 5 years. This smile was sharp, final. Enjoy your evening, gentlemen. And Marcus, you should know. I'm keeping the house, the company, and everything I built. What you get to keep is your delusions. I turned and walked back through the French doors, leaving them frozen in their tableau of guilt and shock. Behind me, I heard frantic whispers. Chairs scraping, panic, but I didn't look back. I headed straight for our bedroom, pulled out my luggage, and began packing the life I was about to reclaim. The bedroom felt different as I packed. The space we'd shared for 3 years suddenly looked like a stage set, beautiful but fake, decorated with props that represented a life that had never been real. I moved with surgical precision. Suits I'd worn to close deals Marcus never attended. The Cartier watch I'd bought myself after landing my first $1 million client. Designer bags that marked professional victories he'd later claim credit for at dinner parties. From the bathroom, I gathered my skincare products, my medications, my prescription bottles. The sleeping pills I'd needed more frequently as Marcus's Thursday gatherings grew longer and louder. As my subconscious apparently tried to warn me something was wrong while my conscious mind refused to listen, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Multiple sets, heavy, uncertain, they were coming. Elena, please, can we talk about this? Marcus appeared in the doorway, his carefully styled hair disheveled from running his hands through it. Behind him I could see Ryan hovering in the hallway, his expression guilty and something else. Relieved. Was he actually relieved this was happening? "There's nothing to discuss," I said, zipping my toiletry bag and placing it in the suitcase. "You've made your position exceptionally clear. I'm beneath you. Our marriage is a joke. You've been consulting with an attorney about taking my company. What part of that requires further conversation?" The color drained from his face. "How did you know about Derek?" I pulled my laptop bag from the closet, the one containing every password, every client contact, every piece of intellectual property I'd developed. "The same way I know about the separate bank account you opened in February. The same way I know you've been telling potential investors I'm emotionally unstable and damaging the company with my ego." Marcus spun to face Ryan, rage distorting his features. "You told her?" Ryan straightened his shoulders, and for the first time in the 5 years I'd known him, he looked like an actual adult instead of an overgrown frat boy. "I've been sending her screenshots for 4 weeks, Marcus. Every message in your group chat about hiding assets. Every discussion about Project Gaslight. Every time you bragged about stealing half of what Elena built. Project Gaslight." I actually laughed. No humor in it, just pure disbelief. "You named it, like it was some kind of mission instead of just destroying your wife's reputation." Carlos and Tyler had crept up the stairs, drawn by the confrontation. They stood in the hallway like actors who'd forgotten their lines, their earlier confidence completely evaporated. "The Thursday gatherings weren't about poker," Ryan continued, his voice gaining strength. "They were planning sessions. Marcus would outline his latest strategy for documenting your supposed instability, taking photos of you working late to prove you were neglecting the marriage, recording conversations out of context, building a case that you were the problem while he was the suffering husband trying to hold everything together. I folded my last dress, the emerald one I'd worn to our company's holiday party, where Marcus had given a speech about partnership and shared vision while contributing nothing to our actual success. And you all participated," I said, facing them. "These men who'd eaten meals in my home, whose birthdays I'd remembered with thoughtful gifts, whose wives I'd comforted through their own marital struggles. You watched this happen for weeks, for months. You helped build false evidence to destroy me because—" "What? Because I was successful? Because my achievements made you uncomfortable?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Marcus's hands clenched at his sides. "Elena, you're blowing this out of proportion. We were just what?" I cut him off. "Just discussing how to steal my company? Just planning to paint me as mentally unstable? Just toasting to the joke of our marriage while drinking wine I paid for in a house I bought, celebrating your plans to destroy the woman who's been supporting your failed ventures for 5 years?" Tyler cleared his throat. "We thought—" "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't finish that sentence. Because there's no acceptable ending to 'we thought.' You thought I deserved it? You thought it was funny? You thought I was too stupid to find out?" I closed my suitcase with a satisfying click. The sound felt final, definitive. Marcus took a step toward me. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere you'll never be able to afford," I said, lifting the suitcase off the bed. "Somewhere built on actual achievement instead of borrowed dreams and stolen credit." I walked toward the door. They parted like water, none of them able to meet my eyes. Ryan spoke as I reached the stairs. "For what it's worth, Elena, I'm sorry. Watching him poison everyone against you while you were literally keeping everything afloat, it ate at me for months." I paused but didn't turn around. "Then you should have spoken up months ago, Ryan. Being sorry now doesn't erase your silence then." The elevator in our building moved with excruciating slowness. Behind me, I could hear raised voices. Marcus, turning his fury on Ryan, the friend who'd finally developed a conscience. When I reached my car in the parking garage, I sat for a moment in the leather seat, hands on the steering wheel, breathing carefully, methodically. My entire life had just fractured into before and after. before I knew, after I found out. But I didn't cry. Not yet. First, I needed somewhere safe, somewhere that was only mine. The Meridian Hotel blazed against the evening sky, its glass facade reflecting the city I'd conquered one client at a time while Marcus played entrepreneur in his fantasies. I walked through the lobby with my head high, refusing to look like a woman fleeing her home. The desk clerk, a young woman with intelligent eyes and a professional smile, didn't ask questions when I requested a suite for 2 weeks. "Business or pleasure?" she asked, processing my credit card. "Neither," I said. "Freedom." She smiled, understanding flickering in her expression. "Congratulations on that, then." The suite on the 26th floor overlooked the financial district, where tomorrow I'd close the biggest deal of my career. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed city lights beginning to glow as evening deepened into night. The space was sterile and perfect, no memories embedded in the furniture, no ghosts of better times haunting the corners, no trace of expensive scotch or false laughter. My phone had been vibrating continuously. Marcus's name appeared again and again on the screen, messages progressing through predictable stages. "You're overreacting. Come home so we can talk like adults." "You misunderstood everything. My friends took things out of context. I'm sorry if what you heard upset you. That wasn't my intention. You're destroying our company with this tantrum. The investors will pull out if they hear we're having marital problems." I set the phone on the bathroom counter and turned on the shower, letting water heat until steam filled the marble space. Standing under the rainfall showerhead, water cascading with pressure our home shower never achieved, I finally let myself feel it. The betrayal, the humiliation, the sickening realization that I'd been performing in a play where everyone knew the ending except me. 12 years. I'd spent 12 years, 5 dating, 2 engaged, 5 married, building a life with someone who'd been gathering evidence for my destruction. While I worked late to close deals that supported us both, he'd been photographing my lit office windows as proof of neglect. While I'd celebrated his ideas and encouraged his ventures, he'd been recording my words to twist them into evidence of instability. The tears came then. Not delicate crying, but deep, wrenching sobs that echoed off marble walls where no one could hear them. I cried for the woman I'd been that morning, still believing in partnership, still thinking love meant endless support, still convinced that my success would eventually make him proud instead of resentful. I stayed under that water until it ran cold, until my skin pruned and my eyes swelled, until I'd purged not just the betrayal, but the shame of not seeing it sooner. When I finally emerged, wrapped in the hotel's luxury robe, night had fully settled over the city. Below, lights twinkled like distant stars, and somewhere out there, Marcus was probably pacing our house, realizing his carefully constructed plan was collapsing. I ordered room service, not because I was hungry, but because I needed to remember how to care for myself without considering someone else's preferences. Grilled salmon instead of steak, Sauvignon Blanc instead of bourbon, chocolate lava cake, because Marcus had always called dessert unnecessary calories, and I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something unnecessary. My laptop glowed on the desk, cursor blinking in the darkness. I opened a new document and began typing. Not a journal entry, not an emotional purge, a strategy document. Because Marcus had made one critical mistake in his elaborate plan to destroy me. He'd forgotten that I was actually good at what I did. Strategy, planning, execution. Those weren't just corporate buzzwords, they were skills I'd honed over 15 years of building businesses from concepts into reality. He'd spent months documenting false evidence. I'd spend tonight documenting truth. By midnight, I had folders organized with precision that had made my company successful. Marcus's failed ventures. Every dollar I'd invested in his dreams. $70,000 in the crypto platform. $42,000 in the meal kit service. $38,000 in the wellness app. Each failure documented with bank statements, LLC registration fees, and marketing costs that produced zero return. Company contributions. Every contract I'd negotiated, every client I'd landed, every late-night call I'd taken while Marcus's office remained dark. Every presentation I delivered alone, the Patterson Tech deal, the Morrison Industries account, 18 other major contracts bearing my signature and my strategy. Financial records, the house purchase I'd made before we married, the savings account I'd built before he entered my life, the investment portfolio I'd grown while he played with concepts, and most importantly, the truth about our partnership, because that's what Marcus had called it at dinner parties. Our partnership, our company, our success. But partnerships require equal contribution. And Marcus had contributed exactly nothing except interference, stolen credit, and now, attempted theft of everything I'd built. A knock at my door at 1 a.m. made me freeze. Through the peephole, I saw Ryan standing in the hallway, looking smaller somehow, holding a cardboard box. I opened the door without speaking. "These are for you," he said, setting the box on the coffee table. "Everything I have, every message from the group chat, every photo Marcus took of you working too much, every discussion about Project Gaslight, every strategy session about stealing your company." He stood there awkwardly, hands in his pockets. "I know this doesn't fix anything, but you need ammunition for whatever comes next." "Why now?" I asked. "Why not 3 months ago when this started?" Ryan sank into the armchair, suddenly looking exhausted. At first I thought he was just venting. You know how people complain about their spouses. But then it became something else. He started taking notes during your phone conversations. Screenshot your texts out of context, building this entire narrative where you were the villain and he was the victim. He looked up at me, genuine shame in his expression. My wife Sophia threatened to leave me if I didn't come forward. She said if I could watch this happen to you, she'd never be able to trust me. She was right. "Smart woman," I said, meaning it. After Ryan left, I opened the box. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, photos, all organized with tabs and labels. Marcus's handwriting marking sections, evidence of neglect, proof of instability, documentation of control issues. But what he'd labeled as evidence of my failures was actually just documentation of my success. Working late wasn't neglect, it was dedication. Making decisions wasn't controlling, it was leadership. Building a company wasn't narcissism, it was achievement. Marcus had gathered all the proof I'd need to destroy him. He'd just been too deluded to realize it. My phone rang at 2 a.m., a number I didn't recognize. "Elena? This is Monica Sullivan, Carlos's wife. I'd met her maybe 6 times. Quiet, observant, always watching. I just found out what they've been doing," she said, her voice shaking. "Carlos came home drunk tonight and told me everything. About the planning sessions, about helping Marcus build a case against you. I'm disgusted." "Monica, I have recordings," she interrupted. Carlos would come home from those Thursday nights and brag about what they'd discussed. He thought it was entertaining, watching Marcus plan this elaborate scheme. After the 3rd week, something felt wrong, so I started recording him. I have hours of him describing their plans, laughing about how you had no idea. Another ally from an unexpected corner. Another weapon in my arsenal. Can you send them to my attorney? I asked. Already uploaded to a secure drive. I'll send you the link. Elena, I'm filing for divorce too. If Carlos could participate in something this cruel, what else is he capable of? What would he do to me if I ever earned more than him or made him feel small? After Monica hung up, I stood at the window watching the city sleep. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably realizing his carefully constructed plan was collapsing. His friends were turning on him. His secrets were being exposed. The staff he'd tried to manipulate would choose the person who'd actually built their careers. And tomorrow, I had the biggest meeting of my career. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. 4 hours of sleep would have to be enough, because Marcus had made another critical mistake. He'd assumed my success made me fragile, that achievements had softened me somehow, made me vulnerable. He'd forgotten that success doesn't make you weak, it makes you dangerous. I woke at 4:47 a.m., 13 minutes before my alarm. My body apparently understood that today would require every advantage, including those extra minutes to prepare. The shower was hot and forceful. I stood under it, not crying this time, planning. Every move, every word, every strategic advantage I'd need for what was coming. By 6 a.m., I was dressed in my sharpest charcoal suit, the one I'd worn when closing the Morrison Industries deal, the one that made me feel like armor instead of clothing. My makeup was precise, covering the exhaustion without looking like I was covering anything. Professional, unshakable. My phone showed 43 messages from Marcus. I didn't read a single one. Instead, I called Patricia Reynolds, the best divorce attorney in the state, a woman whose reputation for destroying unfaithful spouses was so legendary that men trembled when their wives uttered her name. She answered on the second ring, though it wasn't even 6:15 a.m. "Elena Carter," she said, not a question. "Ryan Blackstone called me yesterday evening. I've been expecting you. How much have you seen?" "Everything he had. And I've already started building your case. Can you meet me at 7, my office? We have work to do before your Patterson meeting." Patricia's office was downtown, 20th floor, windows overlooking the city I'd conquered deal by deal. She was exactly what I'd expected. Sharp eyes, expensive suit, the kind of presence that made you sit straighter without realizing it. "Let's be clear about something," she said, laying out files across her conference table. "Your husband isn't just planning to divorce you. He's planning to steal your company. This shadow LLC he's been forming, Morrison Strategy Solutions, it's designed to confuse your clients. The name is deliberately similar to Morrison Digital Innovations. He's been positioning himself to poach your entire client base." She slid a document across the table. "Incorporation papers for Marcus's company, dated 4 months ago, right after I'd landed the Samsung contract that had established us as a major industry player. He's also been approaching your employees," Patricia continued, "offering positions at this new venture, promising promotions and raises he can't possibly deliver, testing loyalty, seeing who he can steal when he makes his move." My hands remained steady as I examined the documents, but inside, rage burned white hot. "What are my options? We're filing an emergency injunction this morning. Marcus will be legally barred from accessing company accounts, making operational decisions, or contacting employees. We're also filing for emergency separation of assets. The house is yours. You purchased it before marriage. The company is yours. You built it. His ventures that you funded? Those become community property he owes you for." Patricia's smile was sharp as a blade. "By noon today, Marcus will have no access to anything except his personal belongings and the reality of what he's lost." "He'll fight it," I said. "Let him." "I've seen the evidence Ryan provided. The Project Gaslight documentation alone is enough to destroy any claim Marcus might make. Add in the recordings from Monica Sullivan, and we have proof of conspiracy to commit fraud. This isn't just a divorce, Elena. This could be criminal." We worked for another hour. Patricia occasionally making calls to judges she clearly knew personally, pulling strings I didn't know existed, building a legal fortress around everything I'd created. At 8:30 a.m. my phone rang, an unknown number. "Don't answer," Patricia advised, but something made me ignore her counsel. "Elena Carter." "Ms. Carter, this is Derek Sullivan, Marcus's attorney, the man who'd been helping plan my destruction." I put him on speaker. "Mr. Sullivan, to what do I owe this interesting call?" "I wanted to reach out directly," he said, and his voice carried the careful tone of someone navigating a minefield. "I've reviewed the situation, and I think there might be room for a reasonable settlement that benefits everyone." Patricia's eyebrow arched. She scribbled a note. "He's seen the evidence. He's trying to minimize damage. I'm listening," I said neutrally. "Marcus is willing to walk away from the company entirely. No claims on assets acquired before marriage. A clean separation. In exchange, we ask for confidentiality about the circumstances of the divorce." Patricia's laugh was cold. "Mr. Sullivan, this is Patricia Reynolds. I'm now on this call, and I want to be very clear. Your client has been planning corporate theft, manufacturing evidence of mental instability, and conspiring to commit fraud. The confidentiality ship has sailed, sunk, and been eaten by sharks. Your client will be lucky if he's not facing criminal charges." Silence on the other end. Then, "Ms. Reynolds, I wasn't aware you were involved." "Now you are." My client will be at her office at 11 a.m. for an emergency board meeting. Your client will receive his injunction notice approximately 10 minutes before that meeting begins. I suggest you prepare him for what's coming. Good day, Mr. Sullivan." She ended the call with a decisive tap. "That," I said, "was beautiful." "That was mercy," Patricia corrected. "The beautiful part comes next." I arrived at my office at 10:30 a.m. The building stood against the morning sky like a monument to everything I'd achieved. Everything Marcus wanted to steal. I used my key card to enter through the executive entrance. Security nodded in recognition. They'd seen me here at all hours for years, unlike Marcus, whose badge activity logs showed he rarely arrived before 11 a.m., and often left by 3. Ryan was already in the main conference room, setting up presentation materials with methodical precision. He looked up when I entered, searching my face for, "What? Forgiveness? Permission to stop feeling guilty?" "Thank you for the evidence," I said simply. "It matters." He nodded, relief flickering across his features. "The board members are arriving separately. Patricia's strategy, she didn't want them arriving together, and Marcus seeing something was wrong." At 10:47 a.m., my assistant Jennifer peeked in. "Elena, I just want to say, half the staff is ready to testify if you need us. We know what Marcus has been doing. We've known for months. That stopped me." "You knew?" She stepped fully into the room, her expression fierce. "He's been terrible at hiding it. The photos through office windows. The recording devices he thought were subtle. Sarah caught him going through your desk 3 weeks ago. We've been documenting everything too, just in case. My team had been protecting me while I'd been oblivious." The thought was both humbling and empowering. Board members began arriving at 10:50. Margaret Chen first, sharp-eyed, brilliant, our largest investor. James Harrison from Patterson Tech, technically an advisory board member given their contract size. Robert Kim and David Okonkwo, 2 other. Investors who'd questioned Marcus's contributions during previous meetings. At 10:55, Patricia arrived with her briefcase and an expression that could have frozen fire. At exactly 11 a.m., Marcus walked through the door. He wore the Hugo Boss suit I'd bought him for our anniversary. His cologne preceded him, the expensive scent he wore to meetings where he took credit for work he'd never done. His expression was confident, that salesman's smile firmly in place. Then he saw the room's configuration. Ryan beside me instead of beside him. Patricia's presence, the board members' serious expressions, the carefully arranged evidence stations around the conference table. His smile flickered. "What's going on?" "Please sit down, Marcus," Margaret Chen said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd built 3 successful companies before investing in mine. "We have matters to discuss." He sat slowly, eyes finding mine. Searching for the woman who'd always protected him, always made excuses, always minimized his failures to save his ego. That woman was gone. "Marcus," Margaret continued, "we've reviewed concerning documentation provided by Mrs. Carter's legal counsel. Documentation that includes your plans to steal company assets, manufacture evidence of your wife's mental instability, and form a competing venture designed to confuse our client base." "Those documents are taken out of context," Marcus said, but his voice lacked his usual confidence. "This is clearly a marital dispute that shouldn't—" "This isn't a marital dispute," David Okonkwo interrupted. "This is attempted corporate theft. This is fraud. This is you systematically planning to destroy the person who built this company while contributing nothing except obstruction." I clicked to the first slide of my presentation. Marcus's message from 7 weeks ago, displayed in 48-point font. "Keep documenting everything. We need to show a pattern of erratic behavior, even if we have to create it." The room went silent. Marcus's face cycled through emotions: shock that his private messages were exposed, rage at Ryan's obvious betrayal, and finally, the desperate calculation of someone trying to salvage disaster. "Those messages were private conversations," he managed. "Between friends, Ryan clearly has his own agenda by exposing them." "My agenda," Ryan said, his voice steady, "is truth. For 3 months, I watched you plan to destroy the woman who built this company. I participated, and I was wrong. The difference is I'm trying to make it right. I advanced to the next slide. Financial records color-coded by who actually closed each deal. My contributions in blue, Marcus's in white, empty white space. Over the past 36 months, I began, my voice carrying the authority I'd earned. Through actual achievement, I've personally closed 22 major contracts totaling $47 million in revenue. During that same period, Marcus has closed 0 contracts while drawing an annual salary of $420,000. James Harrison leaned forward. Elena, I need to be direct. Patterson Tech has never considered Marcus a factor in our decision to work with your company. Every strategic discussion, every innovation, every solution has come from you. We've tolerated his presence in meetings out of respect for you, but he's never contributed a single valuable insight. The truth landed like a physical blow. Marcus's face went white as his largest client publicly dismissed his entire professional existence. The Samsung account, Margaret added. You were on vacation in Palm Springs, Marcus. Elena closed that deal alone. Morrison Industries, she pitched it while you were at a golf tournament. The Lexington Foundation, Elena developed that relationship. Over 18 months while you were launching your meditation app that nobody wanted. I clicked to the next slide. Registration documents for Morrison Strategy Solutions. This shadow company, I said, was registered 4 months ago, the same week I closed the Samsung deal. The timing isn't coincidental. This was Marcus's exit. Strategy. Steal our clients, steal our employees, leave me with the wreckage while he launches a competing venture using everything I built. Patricia stood, her presence commanding immediate attention. Mr. Morrison, as of 9:47 this morning, you are legally barred from accessing company accounts, making operational decisions, or contacting company employees without board approval. You will also be receiving notice of emergency asset separation proceedings. The house belongs to Ms. Carter. The company belongs to Ms. Carter. Your failed ventures that she funded become community property you owe her for. Marcus's attorney, not. Derek Sullivan, I noticed, but someone younger, clearly out of his depth, cleared his throat nervously. We'll need time to review. There's nothing to review, Patricia cut him off. We have documentation of conspiracy to commit fraud, recordings of your client bragging about his plans, evidence of systematic attempts to steal company assets. Mr. Morrison will accept our terms, or will be filing criminal charges by end of business today. The meeting dissolved into Marcus's attorney frantically taking notes, while Patricia outlined terms that left Marcus with essentially nothing except his personal belongings and his grandfather's watch. Marcus remained seated as everyone filed out, staring at the projection screen where his own words about Project Gaslight still glowed accusingly. I packed up my presentation materials, aware of him watching me. When I finally looked at him, I saw a stranger. Not the charismatic man I'd fallen for, not even the resentful husband I'd discovered last night. Just a hollow shell of someone who'd built his entire identity on lies and stolen credit. You destroyed me, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. No, Marcus, I corrected. I revealed you. There's a difference. I walked out of that conference room feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight of protecting his ego, minimizing his failures, pretending his contributions mattered, all of it lifted. At 1 p.m., I sat in a different conference room. Patterson Tech's executive suite, 20th floor, view of the harbor where ships came and went, carrying cargo across the world. David Patterson sat across from me, CEO, founder, a man whose company was worth $3 billion. Before we begin, he said, I want to address something directly. We're aware of your personal situation, your separation from Marcus. My stomach tightened. Had word spread already? Would this affect the deal? And I want you to know, David continued, that it changes absolutely nothing about our confidence in you. In fact, it reinforces what we already knew. You're the talent. You're the vision. You're the reason Patterson Tech wanted to expand this partnership. He slid the contract across the table. $18 million annually, full creative control, exclusive partnership for our global digital transformation initiative. And Elena, I'm tripling your personal consulting fee because you're worth it and because I don't want any other company stealing you away. I signed that contract with a hand that didn't shake, with confidence that came from knowing I'd earned every word in that document. When I left Patterson Tech at 3 p.m., my phone showed a message from Patricia. Marcus signed everything. He gets his clothes, his car, and 30 days to vacate the house. Company is 100% yours. Divorce will be final in 6 months. Well done, Elena. I walked through the downtown streets, sunlight warm on my face, and for the first time in years, maybe in my entire adult life, I felt completely, absolutely free. That evening, back in my hotel suite, I ordered sushi and expensive sake. Not because I needed to celebrate, the day had been exhausting, but because I wanted to remember what it felt like to make choices based solely on what I wanted. My phone rang as I was eating. Monica Sullivan again. Elena, you need to know something else, she said, her voice tight with anger. I found Carlos's journal, pages and pages of notes from those Thursday meetings, but it's worse than we thought. I set down my chopsticks. Worse how? Marcus wasn't just planning to destroy you. He was teaching them how to do it to their own wives. He called it maintaining frame and strategic relationship management. Instructions on how to document spending to make their wives look irresponsible. How to gaslight us about social situations so we doubt our own memories. How to position themselves as rational while painting us as emotional and unstable. The sushi turned to ash in my mouth. Marcus hadn't just betrayed me. He'd been spreading his poison to other marriages, teaching his friends to slowly destroy their wives' confidence and credibility. Carlos has been using these tactics on me for 8 months, Monica continued, making me question whether I said things I clearly remember saying, commenting on my spending while he bought whatever he wanted, telling his family I was too sensitive when I got upset about things that were genuinely upsetting. I thought I was losing my mind, Elena, but it was all deliberate, all coached by your husband. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my suite, city lights spreading below like a galaxy of possibilities and pain. How many women had Marcus hurt through his teachings? How many relationships had he poisoned while pretending to be a mentor to his friends? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Sophie, Ryan's wife. Can we meet? I have information you need to see. We met the next morning at a coffee shop downtown. Sophie arrived looking exhausted, carrying a leather portfolio that she set on the table between us like evidence in a trial. Ryan told me everything last night, she began. About the Thursday meetings, about Project Gaslight, about how he stayed silent while Marcus planned your destruction. She opened the portfolio, but there's more. Inside were printed emails. Messages between Marcus and someone named Victoria Chen. Who is Victoria? I asked, though something in my stomach already knew the answer. A former employee of yours. She left 6 months ago. Marcus told everyone she got a better offer elsewhere. Sophie's expression was grim. The truth is, Marcus was having an affair with her. These emails discuss not just the relationship, but his plans to bring her into the new company he was forming. She was going to be his business partner after he stole your clients. I read through the messages, each one more devastating than the last. Victoria. When are you finally leaving her? I'm tired of being your secret. Marcus. Soon. I need to get the financial documentation right first. Elena's smarter than she looks. I have to be careful. Victoria. You built that company. She just got lucky with a few good clients. When you launch Morrison's strategy, everyone will see who the real talent is. The affair wasn't even the worst part. It was the way Marcus discussed me, as an obstacle, a problem to solve, someone standing between him and the success he thought he deserved. Victoria left because Ryan warned her, Sophie continued. He told her that Marcus was using her just like he was using you. That once Marcus got what he wanted, she'd be disposable too. She didn't believe him at first, but then Marcus told her, She needed to invest $50,000 into the new company to prove her commitment. That's when she realized Ryan was right. Where is she now? Chicago. She took a position with a marketing firm there. But Elena, she's willing to testify if you need her. She's furious about how Marcus manipulated both of you. I thanked Sophie and left the coffee shop with the portfolio, my mind racing with implications. The affair added another dimension to Marcus's betrayal, but what struck me most was the pattern. He didn't just destroy people, he collected them, used them, discarded them when they stopped serving his narrative. The next week passed in a blur of legal proceedings, client meetings, and strategic planning. Patricia filed additional motions based on the new evidence. The affair, the employee manipulation, the systematic coaching of other men to destroy their wives. But something else was happening too. Something I hadn't anticipated. Marcus was unraveling publicly. It started with social media. He posted a long, rambling message on LinkedIn. Success doesn't come from spreadsheets and presentations. It comes from vision and courage. Some people are so focused on numbers that they forget what business is really about. Innovation, disruption, changing the world. I'm excited to announce my new venture focused on authentic leadership and... The post went on for 3 more paragraphs, each sentence more disconnected than the last. Within hours, former clients and industry colleagues were commenting, questioning, pointing out inconsistencies. Then came the phone calls to my company. Marcus called the main line 17 times in one day, demanding to speak with his team. Jennifer handled each call with professional precision, reminding him of the injunction, eventually having to block his number entirely. He showed up at the office building on Wednesday. Security called me before letting him enter. I watched on the lobby camera as he paced, gesturing wildly, trying to explain to the security guard why he deserved access to a company he'd never actually built. He's deteriorating fast, Patricia observed during one of our strategy sessions. The injunction, the public exposure, the loss of control, it's breaking him. Should I be worried? I asked. About him being dangerous? No. About him being pathetic? Absolutely. Men like Marcus, their entire identity is built on perception. When that perception crumbles, there's nothing underneath. No actual skill. No real achievement. Just an empty space where a person should be. Thursday evening, exactly 1 week after I'd walked out, I received a call from Barbara Mitchell, a woman I knew from the country club, connected to everyone who mattered in our social circle. Elena, I thought you should know what's happening at the club, she said without preamble. Marcus has been there every afternoon since your separation became public, drinking, telling anyone who'll listen about how he built your company single-handedly, how you were just a pretty face he used for client meetings. Is anyone believing him? Barbara laughed, sharp and humorless. The bartender told me Marcus's rants have become entertainment for the afternoon regulars. They call it story time with Marcus and take bets on which accomplishment he'll claim next. Yesterday he said he invented a revolutionary cryptocurrency platform. Today he claimed Apple tried to buy his wellness app for millions. The man I'd married was becoming a cautionary tale. A punchline, a warning about what happens when ego becomes untethered from reality. Part of me felt the sharp satisfaction of watching karma unfold. Another part, buried deeper, mourned the person he might have been if he'd chosen gratitude instead of resentment. That weekend, I moved from the hotel into a furnished apartment downtown. Not permanent, I'd eventually reclaim my house, but I needed space that had never known Marcus's presence. Needed to wake up in rooms where his ghost didn't linger. Saturday afternoon, unpacking boxes in my new living room, my phone rang. My mother. Elena, I need to tell you something, she began, her voice carrying unusual tension. I saw it, years ago, how Marcus dismissed your achievements, how he took credit for your work. I should have said something. I set down the box I'd been holding. Why didn't you? My generation was taught that marriage was private. That interference caused more harm than help. I was wrong. She paused, and I heard her take a shaky breath. Watching you rebuild, seeing you thrive, I should have spoken up when he first started diminishing you. I should have told you that you deserved better. I might not have listened, I admitted. Sometimes we need to discover truth ourselves. Maybe, but I want you to know, I'm proud of you. Not just for the company you built, but for walking away the moment you saw the truth clearly. Some women stay for decades, convincing themselves it'll get better. You didn't. That takes a different kind of courage. After we hung up, I continued unpacking. Each item I removed from boxes felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Books Marcus had called pretentious. Art he'd dismissed as wasteful. The coffee maker that brewed properly instead of the cheap one he'd insisted was good enough. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Patterson Tech just posted about our expanded partnership. They specifically mentioned you by name as their visionary partner. It's already trending in industry news. You're officially a big deal. I pulled up the article. There was my headshot, professional, confident, entirely mine. The write-up detailed the expanded contract, quoted David Patterson praising my strategic insight, mentioned Morrison Digital Innovations as led by industry innovator Elena Carter. No mention of Marcus. Not even a footnote. His worst nightmare was coming true. He was being erased from the narrative he'd tried so hard to steal. Monday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Tyler Chen appeared in my office lobby, looking diminished somehow. Smaller than I remembered. Elena, I know I have no right to ask for your time, he began when Jennifer reluctantly showed him to a conference room. But I need to apologize. Face to face. I sat across from him, arms crossed, waiting. What Marcus did to you, what we helped him do, it's been eating at me. Tyler's hands shook slightly as he spoke. My daughter turns 13 next month. Last week she asked me what I'd do if her future husband ever treated her the way Marcus treated you. And I realized I enabled exactly what I'd want to destroy if it happened to her. So your conscience woke up when you imagined it happening to someone you love, I said flatly. That's not particularly impressive, Tyler. You're right. It's not. He pulled out his phone, scrolled to something, then slid it across the table. But I want to make it right. This is a list of every investor Marcus approached with his new venture pitch. Every person he tried to poach from your client list. Every employee he attempted to recruit. I documented everything and sent it to Patricia Reynolds this morning. I looked at the list. 37 names. 37 attempted thefts that I could now prevent proactively. Why now? I asked. Why not 3 months ago? Because 3 months ago, I was a coward who chose comfort over doing what was right. Now I'm a coward trying to fix it, even though I know it doesn't erase the damage. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, you were always the talent. We all knew it. We just let Marcus pretend otherwise because it was easier than confronting him. After he left, I sat alone in the conference room, looking at that list of names. 37 people Marcus had tried to poison against me. 37 conversations I could now have proactively, controlling the narrative before his lies took root. Tyler's redemption didn't erase his complicity, but it gave me ammunition for the final battle. That evening, working late in my new office, the one that had been ours but was now definitively mine, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject, you deserve to gnomes. Carter, my name is Rachel Thompson. I don't know you, but I feel I need to reach out. I was Marcus's girlfriend before you. We dated for 3 years before he met you. I'm writing because I just learned about what he did to you, and it's horrifyingly familiar. When I started earning more than him, Marcus became different, critical, controlling. He started documenting my failures, forgetting to text him back. Working late, spending time with friends he deemed inappropriate. He told people I was unstable, that I had anger issues, that I was sabotaging his career out of jealousy. None of it was true, but by the time I realized what was happening, several of my friendships were damaged and my reputation at my company was questionable. I left him eventually, but it took me 2 years to rebuild professionally. I moved to Portland to escape the rumors he'd spread. I'm telling you this because you need to know. This is who Marcus is. You didn't cause this. You couldn't have prevented it. This is a pattern he's repeated before and would have repeated again if you hadn't escaped. Stay strong. And thank you for finally exposing him. Rachel, I read that email 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of Marcus's systematic destruction. I wasn't his first victim. I was just the first one successful enough that his usual tactics didn't work. How many women had he damaged? How many careers had he tried to destroy simply because their success threatened his delicate ego? I forwarded Rachel's email to Patricia with a single line: "Add this to the file," because Marcus thought this was just about a divorce. About asset division and reputation management. He didn't realize this was about exposing a pattern, about making sure he never did this to anyone else. The war was just beginning. And this time, I had an army. The Forbes journalist arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after I'd walked out of my marriage. Catherine Wells was exactly what I expected. Sharp eyes, designer suit, the kind of presence that suggested she'd built her career by finding stories others missed. "I'm not interested in a puff piece about your company," she said immediately after sitting down in my conference room. "I want the real story, the one about discovering systematic betrayal and transforming it into fuel for something bigger." I liked her immediately. "Tell me about the night you found out," she continued, setting her recorder between us. Not the sanitized version, the raw truth. So I told her. Everything. The Thursday night gathering where I'd stood holding stakes while my husband called our marriage a joke. The Project Gaslight documents revealing 3 months of planning my destruction. Nathan's conscience finally awakening. The shadow company Marcus had formed to steal my clients. The coaching sessions where he'd taught his friends to destroy their own wives. Catherine took notes in shorthand I couldn't read, occasionally interrupting with questions that cut straight to the heart of each revelation. "What strikes me," she said after 2 hours, "is that you didn't seek revenge. You simply revealed truth and let consequences unfold naturally." "The best revenge," I replied, "is building something so successful that the person who tried to destroy you becomes irrelevant." Marcus thought I was beneath his level. Now he's working at a startup in Buffalo for $50,000 a year while I'm running a company valued at $18 million. The universe has its own sense of justice. "Does he still contact you?" "He sends letters," I admitted. Handwritten, 3 pages of what he probably thinks is remorse. But even in his apologies, the delusion persists. He writes about our success, about how he helped build the company, about being a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of his own destruction. The last letter actually suggested that once emotions cooled, maybe I'd consider hiring him as a consultant. Catherine laughed, sharp and disbelieving. "He hasn't learned anything." "Men like Marcus can't learn," I said. "Because learning would require acknowledging reality, and reality destroys the narrative they've built their entire identity on." The article ran 2 weeks later under the headline, "How Elena Carter Built a Digital Empire While Divorcing Dead Weight." It went viral within hours. 2 million readers in the first week. My inbox flooded with messages from women sharing similar stories, thanking me for showing them what survival looked like when transformed into success. But it also triggered something I hadn't anticipated: a movement. Women began coming forward with their own experiences of Marcus's coaching. Monica Sullivan published her recordings. Sophie Blackstone wrote an op-ed about the danger of strategy groups that were actually manipulation training sessions. Rachel Thompson, Marcus's ex-girlfriend from Portland, gave an interview detailing how he'd destroyed her reputation years before meeting me. The pattern was undeniable. Marcus wasn't just a bad husband. He was a serial destroyer of successful women. 4 weeks after the Forbes article published, I received a call from Detective Sarah Martinez with the District Attorney's Office. "Ms. Carter, we've been reviewing the evidence compiled in your divorce proceedings," she began. "Specifically the documents related to your husband's attempted corporate theft and fraud. We'd like to discuss potential criminal charges." I met with Detective Martinez and Assistant DA Thomas Chen the following Monday. They'd assembled a case file that made Patricia's documentation look minimal by comparison. "We have evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud," Martinez explained, laying out documents across the conference table. The shadow company, the attempted client poaching, the manufactured evidence of instability. These aren't just civil matters. They cross into criminal territory. "What are you proposing?" I asked. "We want to prosecute," Thomas Chen said bluntly. "Not just because of what he did to you, but because the pattern suggests he'll do it again. The coaching sessions with his friends, the systematic manipulation. This is someone who views successful women as threats to be neutralized." If we don't stop him now, there will be more victims. I thought about Rachel Thompson in Portland, rebuilding her career after Marcus destroyed her reputation. About Monica Sullivan, who'd thought she was losing her mind while her husband used tactics Marcus taught him. About Victoria Chen, the former employee he'd manipulated with promises of partnership before demanding she invest $50,000 she couldn't afford. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Testimony, documentation, your willingness to see this through even when it gets ugly." Detective Martinez's expression was serious. "Because it will get ugly. Marcus will claim vindictiveness. His attorney will paint you as a scorned wife seeking revenge. The media will dig into every detail of your marriage." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "Prosecute him. Because you're right. If we don't stop him now, he'll just find another successful woman to destroy." The criminal investigation took 3 months. During that time, Marcus's unraveling accelerated into full collapse. He lost his apartment in Buffalo after missing 2 months of rent. His startup fired him for erratic behavior and false credential claims. He moved back to his parents' house in Ohio, a 62-year-old man sleeping in his childhood bedroom, posting incoherent rants on social media about how the system was rigged against visionary entrepreneurs. His LinkedIn profile became a bizarre monument to delusion. He listed himself as founder and CEO of Morrison Strategy Solutions, despite the company never having a single client. He claimed credit for patents that didn't exist and contracts he'd never closed. He posted daily about authentic leadership and breaking free from conventional thinking while living with his parents and being investigated for fraud. The comments on his posts were merciless. Former colleagues questioning his claims, industry professionals pointing out inconsistencies, even strangers noting that his listed achievements didn't match public records. Marcus became a cautionary tale shared in business schools, an example in articles about narcissistic personality disorder, a case study in what happens when ego becomes completely untethered from reality. Patricia called me one evening with an update. The DA is moving forward with charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted corporate theft, and misrepresentation to investors. Marcus could face up to 7 years if convicted. How's he taking it? His attorney requested a psychiatric evaluation. They're trying to build an insanity defense, claim he wasn't in his right mind during the planning phases. Patricia's tone suggested what she thought of that strategy. It won't work. The documentation is too detailed, too calculated. This wasn't mental illness. This was malicious intent. 6 months after I'd walked out holding that tray of cold steaks, the divorce was finalized in a courtroom that smelled of old wood and stale coffee. Marcus arrived looking hollowed out, 47 pounds lighter, wearing a suit that hung loosely on his diminished frame. His attorney was his third. The first had dropped him after seeing the evidence. The second quit when Marcus couldn't pay the retainer. This one looked fresh from law school, probably working pro bono for the experience. The terms hadn't changed from Patricia's original proposal. I retained full ownership of Morrison Digital Innovations, all intellectual property, the house, and all investment accounts. Marcus received his personal belongings, the worthless cryptocurrency wallets from his failed ventures, and his grandfather's watch. No alimony, no future claims, a 5-year non-compete clause in the digital marketing industry. "Mr. Morrison, do you understand these terms?" Judge Victoria Harrison asked, her tone suggesting she'd read the case file and formed opinions. "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus whispered. "And you agree to them freely, without coercion?" "Yes, Your Honor." His signature looked nothing like the confident flourish he'd once used on contracts he hadn't earned. Just a shaky approximation of his name, like an old man forgetting who he used to be. When he stood to leave, Marcus finally looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time since that Thursday night. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "No, you're not," I replied, my voice equally quiet but infinitely steadier. "You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry the plan failed. You're sorry you're facing consequences. But you're not sorry for what you tried to do to me. If you'd succeeded, you'd be celebrating right now." He had no response to that, because we both knew it was true. I watched him walk out of that courtroom, shoulders hunched, moving like a man decades older than his 62 years. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like finality. That evening, I returned to my house for the first time in 6 months. Patricia had arranged for all of Marcus's belongings to be removed while the divorce was being finalized. Professional cleaners had been through every room, erasing physical traces of his presence, but I could still feel him in the spaces. In the patio where he'd called our marriage a joke, in the master bedroom where he'd accepted praise for planning my destruction, in the home office where he'd pretended to work while actually plotting corporate theft. I walked through each room, not with grief, but with the clinical assessment of someone reclaiming territory. In the office, I found something the cleaners had missed, a notebook wedged behind a filing cabinet, filled with Marcus's handwriting, page after page of notes from his Thursday gatherings, strategic discussions about destroying my reputation, lists of my character flaws that he could exploit, quotes from business books twisted to support his narrative that I was the problem, he was the victim. But the last entry stopped me cold. Elena will never see this coming. She trusts me too much, loves me too much. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. She'll be destroyed and I'll finally get the recognition I deserve. Everyone will see that I was always the real talent. I photographed every page and sent them to Patricia. More evidence for the criminal trial. Then I built a fire in the outdoor fireplace, the one I'd had installed 2 summers ago, and burned the notebook page by page. Watching Marcus's words curl and blacken and disappear into ash felt more satisfying than any divorce decree. The criminal trial was scheduled for 8 months later. In the meantime, life moved forward with momentum I hadn't expected. Morrison Digital Innovations landed 6 new major clients, including a government contract worth $12 million over 3 years. I hired 15 new employees, promoted Sarah to VP of Operations, and opened a second office in San Francisco. Forbes published a follow-up article titled The Elena Carter Effect: How One Woman's Courage Sparked a Movement. The piece documented how my story had inspired hundreds of women to leave destructive relationships, start their own businesses, and refuse to minimize their success to protect fragile egos. I received speaking invitations from business conferences, women's organizations, and universities. Each speech I gave focused not on Marcus's betrayal, but on what came after: the rebuilding, the growth, the transformation of pain into power. During one speech at Stanford's business school, a young woman asked, "Do you regret the years you spent with Marcus? Do you wish you'd left sooner?" I considered the question carefully before answering. "Regret is complicated," I said finally. "Do I wish I'd seen the warning signs earlier? Absolutely. Do I wish I hadn't funded his failed ventures, or protected his ego, or accepted credit being stolen? Of course, but those years taught me something crucial. I'm capable of surviving anything. I can build from nothing. I can recover from betrayal and come back stronger. Would I be who I am today without those experiences? Probably not, so I don't regret them. I just wouldn't repeat them." The applause that followed felt different from other standing ovations I'd received. This felt like recognition, like understanding, like hundreds of people seeing themselves in my story and finding permission to write different endings for their own. Nathan called me one evening, 8 months after the divorce was finalized. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from," he began. "But I thought you should know, Marcus tried to contact me. He wants my help appealing the criminal charges. He's claiming the whole thing was a misunderstanding, that he never meant to actually follow through with any of the plans we documented." "What did you tell him?" "That I'd rather set myself on fire than help him. That what he did was unforgivable, and the fact that he still doesn't see that proves he deserves whatever punishment he gets." Nathan paused. "He called me a traitor, said I destroyed our friendship for a woman who didn't even appreciate it." I laughed despite myself. "He really hasn't learned anything." "No, and he never will. Men like Marcus, they're incapable of self-reflection. Everything is always someone else's fault." Nathan's voice carried exhaustion. "Sophie and I are in therapy, dealing with my guilt about staying silent for so long. She forgave me, but I'm not sure I've forgiven myself." "That's actually healthy," I said. "It means you understand the weight of what happened. For what it's worth, I'm glad you escaped. And I'm glad you're thriving. You deserve everything good that's coming your way." After we hung up, I stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Lights sparkled below like possibilities stretching infinitely into the future. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, trial date confirmed. February 14th. Apparently, the universe has a sense of irony, Valentine's Day. The trial that would determine whether Marcus faced prison time was scheduled for the day celebrating love. Smiled at the cosmic joke of it. All February 14th arrived cold and clear, the kind of morning that felt appropriate for reckoning. I dressed in navy, powerful but not aggressive, professional without being corporate. Patricia had coached me extensively on courtroom presentation, on maintaining composure even when the defense attorney tried to provoke emotional responses. They'll paint you as vindictive, she'd warned, as a scorned woman weaponizing the legal system. Stay calm, stay factual. Let the evidence speak. The courthouse was older, with marble floors and high ceilings that made every sound echo. Media had gathered outside. The story had gained national attention after the Forbes articles and subsequent coverage. I walked through them without stopping, without acknowledging questions shouted from reporters who'd turned my life into content. Inside, the courtroom smelled of furniture polish and tension. Marcus was already seated at the defense table, looking diminished in a borrowed suit. His attorney, his fourth I'd learned, was a woman named Diane Foster, with a reputation for aggressive cross-examination. The jury filed in. 12 faces that would determine whether Marcus's actions crossed from civil wrongdoing into criminal behavior. Assistant DA Thomas. Chen delivered the opening statement with prosecutorial precision. The evidence will show that Marcus Morrison engaged in a calculated, systematic conspiracy to defraud his wife, Elena Carter, of assets she'd built through 15 years of hard work. This wasn't a marital dispute that got ugly. This was premeditated theft, disguised as divorce planning, enabled by friends who became accomplices in a scheme to steal a company, destroy a reputation, and leave Miss Carter with nothing but the wreckage of lies. Diane Foster's opening was equally forceful. Marcus Morrison made mistakes in his marriage. He was insecure, jealous, and foolish. But foolishness isn't fraud. Poor judgment isn't conspiracy. What you'll see is a man who felt overshadowed by his wife's success and made bad decisions while venting to friends. Bad decisions aren't criminal. They're human. The first witness was Ryan Blackstone. Thomas Chen walked him through the Thursday gatherings with methodical detail. The Project Gaslight planning sessions, the documentation of manufactured evidence, the discussions about stealing clients and employees. Mr. Blackstone, in your own words, describe what these gatherings were really about, Thomas said. Ryan took a breath, his expression carrying the weight of testimony he'd been dreading for months. They were planning sessions for destroying Elena. Marcus would outline his latest strategy for documenting false evidence of her instability. We'd discuss how to twist her actions into proof she was unfit to run the company, how to position Marcus as the stable, rational one being driven away by an unbalanced wife. And you participated in this? Yes. Ryan's voice cracked slightly. I did. I'm ashamed of that. But I participated. Diane Foster's cross-examination was brutal. Mr. Blackstone, isn't it true that you're testifying against your former friend because your wife threatened to leave you? My wife gave me an ultimatum, yes. But she was right to. What we were doing was wrong. So your testimony is motivated by saving your marriage, not by actual knowledge of criminal intent. My testimony is motivated by guilt, Ryan shot back, and by wanting to prevent Marcus from doing to someone else what he tried to do to Elena. The next witness was Monica Sullivan, who played recordings of her husband Carlos bragging about the planning sessions. His voice, made tinny by recording quality, laughed about Elena having no idea what's coming and Marcus finally taking what he deserves. Then came evidence of the shadow company. Incorporation papers, logo designs that deliberately mimicked Morrison Digital Innovations. Draft emails to my clients claiming I'd had a breakdown and Marcus was ensuring continuity. Victoria Chen testified via video link from Chicago. She described Marcus's affair with her, his promises of partnership, his demand for $50,000 as proof of commitment to the new venture he was forming. He told me Elena was holding him back, Victoria said, her expression uncomfortable. That she'd gotten lucky with a few good clients but had no real vision. That once we launched Morrison Strategy Solutions, everyone would see who the real talent was. Day 2 brought expert witnesses. A forensic accountant who detailed every dollar I'd earned versus every dollar Marcus had contributed. A cybersecurity specialist who showed how Marcus had been accessing my private files, my client communications, my strategic planning documents without authorization. By day 3, the evidence was overwhelming. The defense's strategy shifted from denying wrongdoing to minimizing it. Then it was my turn to testify. Thomas Chen led me through my story chronologically, building my business before meeting Marcus, funding his failed ventures. The Thursday night discovery. The systematic planning revealed through evidence. Ms. Carter, when you discovered your husband's plans, what was your first emotion? I considered the question carefully. Humiliation. Not because he'd planned to leave me, marriage's end, but because he'd been documenting my success as evidence of my failure, taking my achievements and twisting them into proof that I was the problem. Diane Foster's cross-examination was the moment I'd been preparing for. Ms. Carter, isn't it true that you earned significantly more than your husband throughout your marriage? Yes. And didn't that create tension in your relationship? It created tension in Marcus. I was fine with our respective contributions, but you just admitted he felt overshadowed by your success. Isn't it possible that your dismissive attitude toward his career struggles drove him to these desperate measures? I looked directly at Diane Foster, my voice steady. I funded $70,000 in crypto losses, $42,000 for a meal delivery service that never launched, $38,000 for a meditation app that couldn't compete. I attended every pitch meeting for ventures that never materialized. I celebrated his ideas even when they failed. What I didn't do was accept responsibility for his insecurity about my success. That was his burden, not mine. So you're saying you bear no responsibility for the deterioration of your marriage? I'm saying I bear no responsibility for my husband's decision to steal from me. Those are different things. Diane tried several more approaches, suggesting I'd been controlling, implying I'd neglected the marriage by working too much, hinting that my success had emasculated Marcus and driven him to desperate measures. Each time, I responded with facts, with documentation, with the calm certainty of someone who knew her truth and wouldn't be shaken from it. The final witness was Detective Sarah Martinez, who walked the jury through the pattern evidence. Rachel Thompson's story from Portland, other women who'd come forward with similar experiences. The coaching sessions where Marcus taught his friends to destroy their wives. This wasn't an isolated incident, Detective Martinez concluded. This was a pattern of behavior from someone who views successful women as threats that need to be neutralized. Closing arguments happened on day 5. Thomas Chen spoke directly to the jury. Marcus Morrison didn't just plan to leave his wife. He planned to destroy her, to steal what she'd built, to paint her as unstable while positioning himself as the victim. This wasn't venting frustration to friends. This was conspiracy. This was fraud. This was systematic, calculated, premeditated theft disguised as divorce planning. And the evidence proves it beyond any reasonable doubt. Diane Foster made one final attempt. Marcus Morrison is not a criminal. He's a failed husband who made terrible decisions while consumed by jealousy and insecurity. He deserves your judgment, perhaps even your contempt, but not a criminal conviction that will follow him for the rest of his life. Foolishness and cruelty are not the same as fraud. Please remember that distinction. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. I spent that time in a private room adjacent to the courthouse, Patricia beside me, both of us pretending to work while actually just waiting. My phone buzzed constantly. Messages of support from employees, clients, women I'd never met who'd been following the trial. Jennifer had organized a watch party at the office. 37 people gathered around the conference room television, waiting for a verdict. At 4:47 p.m., the bailiff knocked. They've reached a decision. The courtroom felt smaller when we returned. More intimate. Every seat filled with people who'd followed this story. From that Thursday night 6 months ago to this moment of potential justice. Marcus looked gray, depleted, like he'd finally understood that Consequences were real and unavoidable. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Harrison asked. The forewoman stood, a middle-aged black woman who'd taken careful notes throughout the trial. We have, Your Honor. On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find? Guilty. Marcus's head dropped. His attorney's hand went to his shoulder, steadying him. On the count of attempted corporate theft? Guilty. On the count of misrepresentation to investors? Guilty. 3 guilty verdicts. 3 counts that could result in up to 7 years in prison. Judge Harrison scheduled sentencing for 4 weeks later, remanded Marcus to custody pending that hearing. I watched as bailiffs led him away, his borrowed suit hanging loosely on his diminished frame, his dreams of stolen success disappearing behind steel doors. Outside the courthouse, media surrounded me. Patricia had prepared a statement, but standing there in the February cold, I deviated from her script. Marcus Morrison tried to destroy me because my success threatened his ego, I said, looking directly into the cameras. He's not unique. Around the world, successful women face partners who resent rather than celebrate their achievements, who steal credit, who minimize accomplishments, who systematically work to tear down what their wives build up. This verdict isn't just about me. It's about every woman who's been told she's too successful, too ambitious, too much. It's about refusing to make ourselves smaller to protect someone else's fragile sense of self. It's about consequences for those who weaponize love to enable theft. And it's about this message. We will not be diminished. We will not be destroyed. And we will not be silent. The clip went viral within hours. 5 million views by morning. 10 million by the end of the week. Sentencing day arrived on March 14th. Judge Harrison had reviewed hundreds of letters, some supporting Marcus, claiming he'd been driven to desperation, but far more supporting the prosecution's recommendation of significant prison time. Mr. Morrison, Judge Harrison began, her voice carrying the weight of judicial authority. You engaged in a systematic campaign to destroy your wife's reputation, steal her assets, and blame her for your own failures. You coached other men to do the same to their wives. You showed no remorse until consequences became unavoidable. And even then, your apologies ring hollow. Marcus stood, shoulders hunched, unable to meet the judge's eyes. The court sentences you to 5 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised probation. During probation, you are forbidden from holding any executive or financial position in any company. You are ordered to pay restitution to Miss Carter in the amount of $847,000, covering the funds you embezzled through various means. The money invested in your failed ventures and damages for attempted theft. 5 years. Marcus would be 67 when he was released. His reputation destroyed. His career finished. His dreams of stolen success permanently dissolved. As bailiffs led him away for the final time, he looked back at me once. Not with hatred or defiance, just with the hollow recognition that he'd destroyed himself far more effectively than I ever could have. 3 months after sentencing, I sat in my corner office, truly mine now, with no ghost of Marcus's presence, and reflected on everything that had changed. Morrison Digital Innovations had grown to 62 employees across 3 offices. Our annual revenue had hit $32 million. I'd been named to Forbes' Most Innovative Entrepreneurs Under 50 list. Harvard Business School had requested a case study about rebuilding after betrayal. But the external success, while satisfying, wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was the woman I'd become in the aftermath. I no longer minimized my achievements to make others comfortable. I didn't apologize for success or pretend my strategic insights were lucky guesses. I'd stopped carrying the emotional burden of other people's insecurities. Jennifer knocked on my door carrying a FedEx package. This just arrived, marked personal. Inside was a letter from Rachel Thompson, Marcus's ex-girlfriend from Portland. Dear Elena, I've been following your journey since that first Forbes article. Watching you transform what Marcus did to you into fuel for something bigger has been healing for me in ways I didn't expect. For 8 years, I've carried shame about what happened, about not seeing the warning signs, about letting him destroy my confidence and reputation, about running away to Portland instead of fighting back. Your courage gave me permission to stop feeling ashamed. Last month, I accepted a VP position at a major tech company here. The first time my boss praised my work, I didn't deflect or minimize. I just said thank you, that's because of you. Because you showed me, showed all of us, that we're not responsible for other people's cruelty. That success isn't something to apologize for. That surviving and thriving aren't mutually exclusive. Thank you for being brave enough to tell your story. It changed mine. With gratitude, Rachel I read that letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. This ripple effect of healing spreading beyond my own experience was worth more than any verdict or business success. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, family dinner Sunday. Your father wants to celebrate your Forbes recognition properly. Also, your sister has news she wants to share. Sunday arrived with the kind of spring warmth that felt like a reward for surviving winter. My parents' house smelled of garlic and rosemary, my mother's signature, roast that had marked every family. Celebration for 30 years. My sister Claire was there with her. Husband Tom and their 2 daughters. Aunt Margaret had driven up from San Diego. Even my cousin Jessica, who I hadn't seen in 5 years, had made the trip. Okay, before we eat, I need to share something, Claire announced, standing at the head of the table with Tom's hand in hers. Watching Elena's journey this past year has been transformative. For all of us, but especially for me, she looked at Tom, who nodded encouragingly. Tom and I have been in couples therapy for 6 months, because I realized I was doing to him what Marcus tried to do to Elena, diminishing his contributions, taking credit for our partnership's success, making him feel small so I could feel big. The room went quiet. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Elena, watching you refuse to be diminished showed me how badly I'd been diminishing someone I love. How I'd convinced myself that being the primary earner meant I was the only valuable partner. How I'd made Tom feel invisible in his own life. She turned to her husband. I'm sorry. I'm learning to do better. Tom stood and hugged her, and around the table I saw recognition flickering in various faces. My aunt dabbing her eyes, my mother gripping my father's hand. Even Jessica, who'd always projected perfect confidence, looking thoughtful. This family has a history, my mother said quietly, of strong women who sometimes forget that strength doesn't require making others weak. Elena's story reminded us of that. My father raised his glass. To Elena, for surviving, for building, and for teaching all of us what real strength looks like. The toast echoed around the table, and I felt something shift. This wasn't just about my story anymore. It was about a larger conversation, about partnerships, about success, about refusing to diminish or be diminished. 6 months after the trial, I received an invitation to speak at a women's leadership conference in Chicago. 3,000 attendees, including some of the most successful women in business, technology, and innovation. Standing backstage, I felt the familiar flutter of nervous energy. Not fear. I'd conquered fear the night I walked out with my suitcase. Just the healthy anticipation of sharing something that mattered. The introduction was generous. My accomplishments listed like achievements that belonged to someone far more impressive than I felt inside. But when I walked onto that stage and saw 3,000 faces looking back at me with expectation and hope, something clicked. These women weren't here to judge me. They were here to see themselves in my story, to find permission to stop apologizing for their success, to learn how to survive what I'd survived. 18 months ago, I began. I stood holding a tray of cold steaks while my husband told his friends our marriage was a joke and I was beneath his level. Today, I run a company worth $40 million. He's serving a 5-year prison sentence for trying to steal it. And I'm standing here proving that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so successful that your destroyer becomes irrelevant. The applause was immediate and thunderous. I spent the next hour telling my story, not just the betrayal, but what came after. The rebuilding, the legal battles. The moment I realized that Marcus's attempts to diminish me had actually revealed my strength. Here's what I want you to understand, I said, approaching the conclusion. You don't need permission to be successful. You don't need to make yourself smaller to protect someone else's ego. You don't need to apologize for achieving what others only dream about. And if someone in your life, partner, parent, friend, colleague, requires you to diminish yourself for them to feel adequate, That person is showing you exactly who they are. Believe them and leave. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. But what I remember most is the line of women who waited afterward. Each one sharing her story, her version of that Thursday night discovery, her moment of deciding whether to stay small or leave and become everything she was meant to be. A young woman, maybe 26, was last in line. My boyfriend told me last week that I need to turn down the promotion I was offered because it would make him look bad if I earned more than him. I was actually considering it. But hearing your story, I'm taking the promotion, and I'm leaving him. Good, I said simply, because you deserve someone who celebrates your success, not someone who requires you to fail so he can feel adequate. She hugged me, fierce and grateful, then walked away with her shoulders straighter than when she'd arrived. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, I hosted a gathering at my house. Not a Thursday night meeting of conspirators, but a celebration of survival. Sarah, Jennifer, and the entire leadership team from Morrison Digital Innovations. Nathan and Sophie, working through their own recovery from complicity and silence. Monica Sullivan, now divorced from Carlos and thriving as a real estate developer. Patricia Reynolds, who'd become not just my attorney but a genuine friend. Even Ryan's wife Sophia came, bringing homemade wine and stories about their therapy journey. We gathered on the patio, the same space where Marcus had called our marriage a joke. But I'd renovated extensively. New furniture, new lighting, new plants that had never known his presence. The space was mine now, reclaimed and transformed. I want to thank you all, I said, as evening settled into night and wine loosened tongues. Not just for supporting me through the divorce and trial, but for showing me what real partnership looks like. What genuine loyalty means. What friendship is supposed to be. Sarah raised her glass. To Elena, for showing us that success isn't something to apologize for, and that surviving betrayal doesn't mean staying bitter, it means building something better. Later, as guests departed and I stood alone on my patio, I thought about Marcus, not with hatred or even anger anymore, just with the distant recognition of someone who'd been part of my story, but was no longer part of my life. He was in prison, probably still telling himself he'd been the victim. Still constructing narratives where his failures were someone else's fault. Still unable to see that the real tragedy wasn't losing me, it was never valuing me to begin with. My phone buzzed. An email from David Patterson at Patterson Tech. Elena, we're expanding into European markets and want Morrison Digital to lead the transformation. $50 million contract over 5 years. Are you interested? $50 million. The kind of deal that would establish my company as a global player. The kind of opportunity Marcus had always dreamed of, but never had the skill to achieve. I typed my response without hesitation. David, absolutely interested. Let's schedule a call to discuss strategy. Looking forward to this partnership. I sent the email and set down my phone, looking out at the city lights spreading below like possibilities without limit. Marcus had tried to destroy me because he couldn't stand being overshadowed by my success. What he never understood was that you can't overshadow someone unless you're standing in their light. And I wasn't standing in his light. I never had been. I was the light. 2 years after that Thursday night discovery, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined while standing frozen with a tray of cold steaks. Morrison Digital Innovations now operated in 6 countries with 218 employees. We'd landed the Patterson European contract, plus major partnerships with 3 Fortune 100 companies. Annual revenue had hit $94 million. But more importantly, we'd implemented policies that mattered. Salary transparency, anti-discrimination protections, specifically addressing success-based harassment. A mentorship program connecting successful women with younger professionals navigating similar challenges. I'd also started a foundation, the Illuminate Project, dedicated to supporting women rebuilding their careers and lives after leaving destructive relationships. We provided legal support, business coaching, and zero-interest loans for women starting their own ventures. Rachel Thompson from Portland had become the foundation's director. Monica Sullivan ran our real estate investment arm, helping women secure housing after leaving dangerous situations. Sophie Blackstone managed our therapy partnership network, connecting survivors with mental health support. Even Nathan contributed, though his role was carefully defined. He led workshops for men about recognizing and interrupting toxic behavior in their friendships, teaching them how to speak up instead of staying silent like he had. "I can't undo what I enabled," he told me during one of our quarterly foundation meetings. "But I can prevent the next Nathan from making the same mistake. I can teach men to choose courage over comfort when they see their friends becoming destroyers." The Foundation's first year, we helped 63 women leave destructive relationships and rebuild their careers. By year 2, that number had grown to 217. Each woman who came through our program received not just financial support, but something more valuable, validation that leaving wasn't weakness, that success wasn't something to apologize for, that surviving was just the beginning of thriving. Meanwhile, Marcus's story took a different trajectory. He served 3 years of his 5-year sentence before being released for good behavior. At 65 years old, he emerged from prison into a world that had moved on without him. His reputation was unsalvageable. A simple Google search of his name returned pages of articles about the trial, the fraud conviction, the systematic attempts to destroy his wife. No company would hire him. No investors would fund him. The industry he'd once tried to dominate wouldn't even acknowledge his existence. He moved back to Ohio permanently, living in his elderly parents' home, working part-time at a hardware store owned by his cousin. His social media presence, once full of grandiose claims about visionary leadership, went silent. His LinkedIn profile was eventually deleted. Ryan sent me updates occasionally, not because I asked, but because he thought I deserved to know. "Marcus reached out again," Ryan told me during a phone call, asking if I thought you'd ever forgive him. "If there was any chance of reconciliation, what did you tell him?" "The truth. That forgiveness isn't something he's earned or even tried to earn. That reconciliation would require acknowledging what he did, and he's still incapable of that. That you've built an incredible life without him, and he's not welcome in it." How did he respond? He said I'd turned everyone against him, that he was the real victim, that prison had been unjust. Same delusions, different day. I felt nothing hearing that. Not satisfaction, not anger, not even pity. Just the distant acknowledgement that some people never learn, never grow, never develop the self-awareness required for genuine change. Marcus would spend the rest of his life trapped in his own narrative, convinced he'd been wronged, unable to see that he'd destroyed himself more effectively than I ever could have. And I would spend the rest of my life building things that mattered. 3 years after the divorce, I met someone new. His name was Daniel Chen, a corporate attorney who specialized in intellectual property law. We met at a legal conference where I was keynoting, and he was attending a panel on business, protection strategies. What struck me first wasn't his appearance, though he was attractive, but his response when I mentioned my company during our initial conversation, Morrison. "Digital innovations," he said thoughtfully. "You handled the Patterson European expansion last year. Brilliant strategy, especially the phased market entry approach. That must have been incredibly complex to coordinate." He knew my work, not because of the Forbes articles about my divorce, but because he actually followed industry developments and recognized strategic excellence when he saw it. We talked for 3 hours that first evening. About business, about law, about the balance between protecting what you've built and remaining open to partnership. He asked questions that revealed genuine interest rather than polite performance. He challenged my ideas respectfully, offering perspectives I hadn't considered. And when I mentioned, testing his response, that I'd recently closed a $100 million contract, he smiled and said, "Congratulations. That's remarkable work. No diminishment, no competitive discomfort, just genuine recognition of achievement." We dated for 8 months before I introduced him to my family, slowly, carefully, with the wisdom of someone who'd learned that trust was earned through consistent behavior, not charming words. My mother pulled me aside after the first family dinner where Daniel was present. "He celebrates you," she observed. "When you mentioned the new Tokyo office, he looked proud, not threatened, not resentful, proud." She was right. Daniel had his own successful practice, his own achievements, his own identity that didn't require diminishing mine. When Morrison Digital won awards, he celebrated genuinely. When I worked late on major deals, he brought dinner to my office and sat reading quietly. While I finished negotiations, he was what Marcus had never been, secure enough in himself that my success enhanced, rather than threatened him. I'm not sure I know how to do this, I admitted one evening as we sat in my living room, the house Marcus had tried to steal. How to be in a relationship where I don't have to make myself smaller. Daniel considered that carefully before responding. Then don't make yourself smaller. Be exactly who you are. If I can't handle that, it's my problem to solve, not yours to manage. That's when I knew he was different. Fundamentally different from the man who'd called our marriage a joke while drinking wine in my backyard. 4 years after that Thursday night, I received a handwritten letter. Marcus's handwriting, though shakier now. Mailed from Ohio. I almost threw it away unopened. Patricia advised burning it unread. Jennifer suggested framing it as a reminder of what I'd survived. But curiosity won. Dear Elena, I know I don't deserve your time or attention. I know an apology at this point is meaningless. But I need to try anyway. Prison gave me a lot of time to think. To remember. To finally see what I spent our entire marriage refusing to acknowledge. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I couldn't handle you being better than me at something that mattered. You built that company. You landed every major client. You created strategy and vision and success while I played pretend entrepreneur and convinced myself I was contributing. I knew it even then. I just couldn't admit it because admitting it would mean accepting that I'd failed. So instead, I tried to steal what you built. I tried to destroy your reputation so I could claim your achievements. I tried to convince everyone, including myself, that I was the talent and you were just lucky. The truth is, you were never lucky. You were brilliant, hardworking, strategic. Everything I pretended to be but never actually was. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even think I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I finally see the truth. It took losing everything, serving time in prison, and spending 3 years working at a hardware store for minimum wage to break through my delusions. You were never beneath my level. Elena, I was never anywhere near yours. I hope you're happy. I hope you've built an even bigger empire. I hope you found someone who celebrates your success instead of resenting it. And I'm sorry for everything, for all of it, for wasting 12 years of your life with someone who was too insecure to appreciate having you. Goodbye. Marcus, I read that letter twice. Then I set it down and felt nothing. Not forgiveness, not anger, not satisfaction, just the distant recognition that Marcus had finally achieved clarity. 4 years too late. A marriage, a company, a freedom, and 3 years in prison too late. His apology didn't change anything, didn't undo the betrayal, didn't erase the Project Gaslight planning sessions or the shadow company or the systematic attempts at destruction. But it confirmed something I'd learned through this entire experience. People reveal themselves eventually. Some reveal strength, others reveal weakness. Marcus had revealed himself as someone incapable of celebrating another person's success, especially when that person was his wife. And I had revealed myself as someone capable of surviving anything. Of building from ruins, of transforming betrayal into fuel for something bigger. I filed Marcus's letter in a folder marked closed chapters and returned to my life. The life I'd built, the empire I'd created, the success that was entirely, absolutely, undeniably mine. 5 years after that Thursday night, Morrison Digital Innovations was valued at $200 million. I'd been approached by 3 major firms interested in acquisition, but I'd declined each offer. This company was mine, built from my vision, my strategy, my work. I wasn't selling it to become someone else's success story. Instead, I'd taken it public. IPO in September, stock price immediately jumping 43% above offering price. Forbes called it one of the most successful tech IPOs of the decade. My personal net worth hit $112 million. The celebration party was at the same venue where Marcus and I had held our wedding reception 8 years earlier. Not because I was sentimental, but because I wanted to replace that memory with something better. Something that was entirely mine. 300 people attended. Employees, clients, investors, friends, family. Daniel was there. having proposed 3 months earlier with a ring he'd designed himself and a speech that began, "I want to spend my life celebrating you." My team had created a video montage for the event. Photos of our journey, the early home office days, the first downtown suite, the expansion into San Francisco, the European launch, the Tokyo opening. Each image marking growth that had been hard-won and entirely earned. But they'd also included one photo from before, from the Thursday night gatherings. Marcus holding court at my patio table, surrounded by friends who'd enabled his delusions. The room went silent when that image appeared. Then the next slide. Me, walking out with my suitcase that night. Heading toward everything that came after. "This is where it began," Sarah's voiceover said. "Not with betrayal, but with the decision to stop accepting it." Elena walked away from a man who called her success a joke. And she built an empire that proved success is never a joke. It's just something small people can't comprehend. The applause that followed felt different from any other standing ovation I'd received. This felt like recognition from people who'd been there, who'd seen the worst moment and helped build everything that came after. I stood to speak, looking at faces that had become my chosen family. 5 years ago, I began. My husband told his friends I was beneath his level. Tonight, I'm standing here worth $100 million, leading a company that's changing how global businesses think about digital transformation. The question isn't whether I was beneath his level. The question is whether he was ever anywhere near mine. But this isn't a story about revenge. Revenge would mean Marcus still mattered. This is a story about revelation, about discovering that the person you thought you'd married was actually someone entirely different. And then deciding whether to let that destroy you or define you. I chose definition. I chose to let betrayal reveal my strength rather than expose my weakness. I chose to build something so successful that my destroyer became irrelevant. I raised my glass, looking at Daniel, at my team, at the family and friends who'd supported me through the darkest moments, to revelation, to rebuilding, to refusing to be diminished, and to the truth that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so successful that you forget the people who tried to destroy you even exist. The toast echoed through the ballroom, glasses clinking like celebration made audible. 10 years after that Thursday night, I sat in my corner office overlooking a city I'd conquered twice, once through my company. Once through surviving what had tried to destroy me, Morrison Digital Innovations was now a global powerhouse. 4,000 employees across 23 countries, annual revenue of $700 million, industry-leading innovation that had reshaped how companies approached digital transformation. I'd married Daniel. We had twin daughters who were 6 years old, brilliant and fierce and unafraid to be exceptional. The Illuminate project had helped over 3,000 women leave destructive relationships and rebuild their careers. Rachel Thompson had expanded our reach internationally. Monica Sullivan had developed a real estate portfolio specifically for survivors transitioning to independence. And Marcus? His story had ended quietly. He'd died 2 years earlier, heart attack at 69 while working his shift at the hardware store. His obituary mentioned failed ventures and a fraud conviction, but didn't mention me. I only learned about his death when Ryan sent a brief message. "Thought you should know. Marcus passed away yesterday." I'd felt nothing. Not grief, not satisfaction. Just the acknowledgement that a chapter already closed had finally ended. The memorial service was small. His elderly parents, a few distant relatives, Ryan attending out of obligation rather than affection. No one from his Thursday night group, no business associates, no one from the life he'd tried to steal from me. He'd died as he'd lived, alone in his delusions, convinced he'd been wronged, never understanding that he'd destroyed himself. My daughters asked me recently, during bedtime when questions became philosophical, whether I had any regrets. "Mom, do you wish you'd never married him?" Sophia asked, her 6-year-old face serious. I considered that carefully. 12 years of my life invested in someone who'd tried to destroy me. 12 years I could have spent building even more. Loving someone genuine, avoiding the pain of betrayal. No regrets, I said finally, because without those experiences, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have learned that I'm strong enough to survive anything. I wouldn't have built the foundation that helps other women survive what I survived. I wouldn't have learned the difference between someone who loves you and someone who uses you. Plus, I added, smiling at both girls, if I hadn't married him and left him, I wouldn't have met your father, and then you two wouldn't exist. That would be my biggest regret of all. Emma, my other daughter, nodded seriously. So bad things can lead to good things? Yes, but only if you choose to let them. If I'd stayed with Marcus, if I'd accepted his version of reality where I was beneath him, the bad thing would have just stayed bad. It became good because I chose to leave, to rebuild, to become someone even stronger than who I'd been before. After they fell asleep, I stood at their bedroom door, watching them breathe in the peaceful rhythm of children who'd never known instability or betrayal, or the kind of destruction Marcus had tried to visit upon me. They would grow up knowing their mother had built an empire, that she'd survived betrayal and transformed it into fuel for success, that she'd refused to be diminished and taught thousands of other women to do the same. That was the legacy that mattered. Not the divorce, not the trial, not the headlines or the Forbes articles or the viral speeches. The legacy was this: teaching people, especially women, especially my daughters, that success is never something to apologize for. That leaving someone who diminishes you is strength, not weakness. That the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so extraordinary that your destroyer becomes a forgotten footnote in your story of triumph. There's a moment in every destructive relationship where you have to choose: stay and accept the diminishment, or leave and risk everything to reclaim yourself. I chose risk. I chose myself. I chose to believe that I was worth more than being someone's stepping stone to stolen success. That Thursday night, when Marcus called our marriage a joke, he revealed himself completely. Not as the charming man I'd married, not as the struggling entrepreneur I'd supported, but as someone so consumed by insecurity that he'd rather destroy me than celebrate me. And I learned this: people who require you to fail for them to feel successful don't love you. They use you, and the moment you stop being useful, the moment your success overshadows their fragile ego, they'll destroy you to protect their delusion. But here's the truth: Marcus never understood. You can't destroy someone who knows their worth. You can betray them, you can hurt them, you can temporarily knock them down, but if they know their value, they'll rise. They'll rebuild. They'll become something even stronger than what you tried to break. 5 years became 10. 10 will become 20. And every year I'll build something bigger, achieve something more, help more people survive what I survived. Because the best revenge isn't destroying your destroyer. It's building an empire so successful that you forget they ever existed. That's real power. That's true success. That's justice. If this story of survival, justice, and empire building resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that success is never something to apologize for, and leaving someone who can't celebrate you is the bravest choice you'll ever make. Drop a comment about your favorite moment. Mine? When Elena looked at Marcus in that courtroom and said, "You're not sorry for what you tried to do. You're sorry you got caught." Pure power. See you in the next story of courage, karma, and unshakable strength.